Good morning. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different again. I'm going to do a fly tying video. So I'm about to go up on my trip up north, steelheading for 6 weeks in less than a week. And although I've got tons of flies, I probably don't even need to tie any. It's always nice to have, a dozen freshies. Not that you even burn through that many flies, but it's just nice to have a lot of times. You might get snagged once in a while. Flies do get worn out, especially if you're catching fish. They do get beat up after a while. So it's still nice to have a handful of fresh ones in the fly box, and you can throw them on when you need them. And especially if I'm going for such a long period of time, I imagine I'll probably go through a few flies, and I'll bring sort of a basic tying kit with me just to. I wouldn't want to be up there and run out of flies. I can't imagine that would happen, but it's just peace of mind. Makes me it's my little safety blanket to know I got a fly tying kit and I can hammer out a few more if I need them. So yeah, this is kind of my go-to steelhead pattern now. You can tie more elaborate flies, like intruder style flies, and many people do, and it's a lot of fun. It's very creative, and you're really only limited by your imagination for tying these flies. So, for example, just in front of me here, this is a purple and pink intruder my buddy tied from Prince George. Actually, he gave me this probably like in 2010. You probably forgot all about it, but I just leave it sitting here on my fly tying desk to look at. And a different, well, similar, I suppose, but this is something I just tied a long time ago and I just don't use it. But just a purple and pink style intruder fly. And although those are really fun to tie, they are. But some of them could take you like an hour to tie, and then it's like a piece of art, and then it just breaks your heart when you lose it on a rock. So I guess the flies I tie now are somewhere between like patterns that are effective and actually work and catch a bunch of fish, but they're also not labor intensive, so I don't have a lot of time and expensive material invested into them. And they catch me fish. I started using these over 10 years ago, and slowly my steelhead box has just become a box of these style flies. Black and blue, purple and blue. The one I'll tie right now is going to be a purple egg sucking leech with blue flash. And I mean, steelhead are going to bite a lot of things. So I'm not saying these are the end all be all flies, but if you just want a simple pattern that you can, hammer 10, 12, 15 out real quick compared to some of the more complex flies, it's a good pattern. It's simple, like I said, time effective, but they're also durable. And I do like to tie these flies and all my flies to last. I mean, I would never forgive myself if I had the biggest steelhead in my life on and my fly fell apart and it got off. So I don't got corners on that. I use a lot of super glue for the foundation of it just to make sure everything's strong. But yeah, and then you can do these flies in any color variation you want. Like I said, you're only limited to your imagination. But after a while, fly fishing for steelhead comes down to confidence. It's like, what have you caught your fish on? And everyone can tell you whatever flies are their favorite and what they've had their most success on. But at the end of the day, especially when fishing slow, you should be throwing something you're confident in, something has caught you fish in the past. And if there is a fish in that run, there's you at least have a high chance of catching them on this fly. So, or on your favorite fly. So, anywho, enough talking. I will. I guess probably going to take me a few minutes. It's not going to be a super exciting video, so I'll try and edit it and speed it up a little bit, so you have to stay here for the full tie. But just try to give you sort of the highlights along the way, so you see what I'm doing. So first thing I do with these, if this is going to be the egg sucking leech, is you have the Waddington shanks that I'll use on other patterns. But the problem with that is you can't. There's ways to do it, but I find this is a simpler way. So I just take a little. So it's terrible. Just a little standard shank hook, and I bend it out a little bit, just like that. And there's 1,000 different ways to do this. So I mean, if you do it differently or someone else is showing you how to do it differently, that's awesome. And in all fairness, I mean, yeah, I'm open to learning too. So if you have a better way of tying these flies, I'd love to hear about it. Post a video in the comments or send me a message. Let me know how you do it. But what I'm going to do is take this hook and this pink bead head, and I'm going to slide it on. This is why I need to bend the hook open, right? So now I've got this bead head on the end of my shank. But what I'm going to do is I don't want to use this hook for fishing. So I'm going to, at the end, cut this, and then I'm going to attach trailer hook on some wire. I'll do that right now. Show you how I do that. Yeah, and like I say about everything, I'm an expert of nothing. This is just how I do it, and I certainly don't know how to do everything correctly. And this is just in some ways, how I figured out to do it on my own. I've obviously had lots of I got friends that are amazing fly tires, and they've showed me lots of stuff. And again, this is just how I kind of do it, and I've done it for years, and it works for me. So I know it's a proven pattern or a proven way to tie it. But this is what I use. I use real wire bite tippet for like toothy fish and 30 pound. And the only reason I keep coming back to this because of the diameter. It's strong, but it's real thin. I like that. I don't want a trailer hook that's too stiff or trailer wire material that's too stiff because then my tail's moving around, but then it's like a rigid trailer hook. And I don't know. I feel like maybe the tail gets wrapped around that or just doesn't look as enticing. So I like the flexibility of this, I think. And after you use it a little bit, it starts to break in a little bit more. So I just eyeball it now and I'll take a section. You don't want to overdo it. I mean, just use what you need. Probably shouldn't be cutting wire with my scissors, but I have been for years, so they're super dull, so don't judge me on that. But they keep cutting, so. And then I have this hook, and this is just call it a dummy hook, right? It's dull, but I just use it for measuring out my trailer hook and my material. So then when I actually like take this fly, because I won't leave this in my fly box or this fly with a hook on it, I'll leave it hookless. That just keeps it one way more organized inside the box. But two, when I pull it out to put it on my fishing line, I then have a pack of size 2 octopus hooks, like good sharp ones that are chemically sharpened, and I'll just throw that on this trailer hook material. So I'll show you how this works. So I just stick the 2 ends through the eyelet. I hope you guys can see this. I apologize. We'll see how this video turns out, and I already feel like it's too dark, but I'll upgrade down the road. So then I loop it around the eyelet like that. Kind of eyeball it out to as long as I think I might want it. And I've already laid my thread base down there. And you're trying to put this on as level and evenly as you can. You don't want it all messed up. The cleaner you set this, the better the fly is going to ride. So I'm just doing a couple loose wraps. I don't want it there permanently. See how that hook sits like that? I don't like that. So I'm going to start that over again because you can lay this down perfect. Let's try that again. Just want those 2 pieces of wire to be married beside each other perfectly. It's a couple loose wraps. There you go. That's better. Kind of keep tension on it. How's that? So before I lock it down, I'm going to test, right? Because I'm going to be taking hooks on and off of this if I delve the tips on hooks. So that's pretty good. But my experience, I like a little bit more. So I'm going to loosen the wraps and I'm just going to pull it out maybe like another 2 millimeters. This is where my OCD kicks in. Like I just like to have everything where it should be type deal. So, and that tension, I feel like really does help. Yeah, that's perfect. I just want lots of clearance. And then the other thing too is if you give yourself a little bit of extra clearance on that trailer hook, so making that longer than the length of that hook, maybe you want to put on a size 1 hook, so you want to up the size of your hook. But if you only tied that trailer hook material or line to accommodate this smaller hook, you won't be able to get it through the eyelet over the hook to loop it on of say a size 1 hook. So I just like giving it a couple extra millimeters than I necessarily need, and then you have that option. You may never do it, but it's there. So I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to start locking down this wire bite tippet. Again, you're trying to keep it nice and flat on top. It will sit there if you take your time to do it right. You don't want your if that gets all wonky and pulled off to the side, then your hook won't ride straight. It'll be all like kind of crooked. I'm sure it'll still catch a fish, but it looks stupid. And this, I know like some people probably just do the minimum of what you need here, but man, I get paranoid, especially when I go up north. Like, what if I catch like a 25-pound buck steelhead and main stem river, and it's just peeling. Like, I want to feel good that my fly is as tough and durable as it's going to be. And I'll spend the extra couple pennies to burn through some extra thread material on this. Again, these are not works of art. These are like flies that I'm tying because they're practical and they're durable. So the next thing I do, don't ask me why I do this, but I like to do a few wraps under that between the shank of the hook and that material. And if you can see it, now it sits like up a little bit. So you don't want to overdo that, but I just like to do a few quick ones. Because I find like when a fish pulls real hard on it, or maybe you get a snag, I don't want this to kind of already be sitting low. Because if you're the way I tie, I don't attach the tail to the trailer hook. So I want that to be as flush as where my rabbit zonker is going to sit too, right? And if I don't do those few wraps underneath, I feel like it kind of maybe droops a little bit. Again, probably doesn't matter, and I don't know if I've ever missed fish over it, but these are just my little OCD things I like to do, so I'm just showing you. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tag end, I'm going to fold it back over like that. You know, like it's a little bit long. This is just an extra way to lock everything together, right? So I'm going to pull this back and lay it flat on top of that thread on the shank. And I'm going to start wrapping over that. So now that goes through, it's wrapped, but then it comes back across the top and it's wrapped again. So again, the strength of this is getting stronger. And then I really like to lay it on, because the other thing too is with those Waddington shanks, you have like hard to explain, but there's like it's wider at the bottom, so there's a little spot that's like a bump, and that for sure helps. Like if you're any risk of pulling this off, it's never going to slide off a Waddington shank just because there's like a stopper at the back. But when you're cutting hooks like this, so I'm going to cut this, I'm going to file it so it's not sharp, but there's nothing here. It's pretty, I don't know, just straight. Again, I've never had one pull apart, but it's because I think I overdo it on this stage. So I just, again, if you got the biggest fish of your life, the last thing you want to be thinking about is, did I tie that fly strong enough? So I overdo it. Like I said, everyone does it differently. And if you think I'm crazy for doing all this, that is totally fine. Oh, that's a heartbreaker. How did that happen? So here's a good opportunity. If your thread breaks for no good reason like that, here's how you don't have to start over. So I'll start wrapping again. Now I've got the broken piece and a fresh tie on. And all you do is that. Back in the game. So there's obviously something happening here. What? Maybe there's something sharp on the hook shank? I don't know. This is not normal for that to happen twice. There must be something there. Well, you're getting real world tying. It's not always pretty and perfect. Okay, so that's wrapped on there pretty good. And you're trying to make it pretty tight. Maybe that's why a thread was breaking. Maybe I was pulling a little bit hard. So just feel it out. All right. Probably getting to the point of overdoing it. But you also want to try to make it level too. I don't think it's a big deal, but I enjoy a level rat fly. All right. Overkill, I know. But I feel good now that is super strong enough coming off. And just to add a little bit more to it, crazy glue. It's cheap and it works. So what I'll do is I'll take a straight edge pin. I'll just put a little dab, and then I run it over all these threads, top and bottom, side. Look at that. It just sinks or soaks right into that thread. And again, that's just one more piece of support for this whole fly, and yeah, it's not going to come apart like that. It's locked in. All right, so we're just going to wait a few minutes and let that super glue dry. But in the meantime, what we can do, start cutting our zonker. So just standard purple zonker. You always want to get straight zonker, not cross cut. You know what? Even the cross cut for the body, I don't necessarily like it. I think I like straight cut just across the board. One, the tail, you want the hair to be in straight in that direction. But then when you wrap too, I think it makes a fuller body, right? So when you use the cross cut zonker and it's all pointed like horizontally, it may look kind of cool when you wrap it and it's nice and sleek and blend, like kind of blends together. But once it gets in the water, I feel like it makes it even skinnier, right? You're trying to make something underwater that even with rabbit zonker, it's not an intruder, so it doesn't have like polar bear dubbing to like kick up all the hackles of the various feathers and that sort of thing. You're trying to make something big and aggressive underwater that moves water, but also sinks, but also, maybe undulates enough to like upset a steelhead enough that he's going to come over and kill your fly. Anyways, a bit of a side rant there. But I like using straight cut zonker because then when you wrap the body, the hair is straight up. So that kind of creates more of a fuller body and naturally wants to open up again. So as it's swinging through the water current, it's obviously going to like bend over. But then when the pressure comes off, hopefully it flares up again. So you kind of get this like undulating. I don't think you really get that with the cross cut if you wrap your cross cut to go with the kind of length and direction of the fly. So, anyways, I'm gonna pull out some purple rabbit zonker. And even though it's all the same, you always want to find that perfect piece that's going to make your fly the best. Sometimes what I like to do too, if I got some kind of, and you'll notice even in the same pack, some feel a bit thinner, some feel a bit chunkier, like the leather part on the bottom. So I'll use that for the tails because I like wrapping my flies nice and tight with like the thinner leather of the rabbit zonker. So I guess we'll call this good. Pull these two apart. And then you're always sort of trying to tie your fly so they're not too chunky, right? You don't want just gobs of material. You're essentially trying to use the least amount of material possible to make the fly that you want to make. I just feel like that way it doesn't hold as much water, and you always want it to sink, right? So if you're not dry fly fishing, you probably got a sink tip on. So at that point, whether it's a heavy sink tip or a light sink tip, you're ultimately playing the subsurface game, right? So if you want to get away with, say, a lighter sink tip, I like to go with a decently heavy fly, right? Because you don't ever want to be like snagging on bottom, but unless the fish are aggressive, I don't know, it just helps to get it closer to the fish, right? Um, so again, I like to try and use as little material as possible to accomplish the fly because then that way it's not gonna hold water or it won't hold air either in the fur. Sometimes if you don't soak your fly, like a rabbit zonker fly, well enough, there'll be air trapped right next to like the shank inside the fly, and then there's a chance that it's floating to some degree, right? So sometimes, if I put a fresh fly on, I'll just hold it underwater and rub it around and make sure it's good and soaked right to the core of the fly, right? That way when it hits the water, it's already full of water and it just sinks right away. All right, so what I'm gonna do is this is the part I'm gonna tie on. So I'm gonna cut like a V at the end because I don't need all that material to tie it on. This is what I'm talking about, not making it too chunky. Just cutting it down to exactly what you need. Yeah. So hopefully this is working, but you can see how I've cut that into a triangle. So what I'm going to do now, glue should be dry enough. Wrap this all the way to the back. Couple loose wraps, make sure you like your position, it's sitting flat. And again, even though I overdo the trail rig material, you try not to overdo the rest of this, right, with thread wraps, because you can make it real chunky and not really good looking. So that's plenty there. And then I like to also, without putting pressure on the trailer material, do a couple of wraps behind there. And again, you kind of see how that a little bit kicks up the tail. I just don't want to get too tangled. So this is why I put the dummy hook on for this stage, right? Because then I can see where I need to snip this tail at so it rides properly. So something I do as well is just depending on the conditions, right? So if fish are super aggressive, super grabby, or the water is dirtier and I want a bigger fly is not a big deal, I may leave a little bit of extra material. But if it's real low and clear, or the fish are just not really aggressive that day and they're just really nipping at the back, it can happen. You could have a fly, like this is way too long. Let's say your fly was cut to there. Man, you can have steelhead just grabbing this tail, like, and they're just constantly pulling at it, and they're just not getting to your hook, right? But you don't want too long of a hook either, because if a steelhead really crushes it, you can get them in the throat or the gills, and obviously none of us want that and injure the fish. So you're trying to, if you're going to use a trailer hook, you don't want to go overdo it. You just want to still catch them in the scissors. Um, so I carry a little pair of scissors, actual scissors, in my waders, and I'll trim these flies depending on the conditions, how I feel about it. So what I'll do, I'll go past the hook more than I know I'll probably actually use when the time comes. Cut that. Because you got to remember, when this gets wet too, this is going to straighten right out and almost get longer. But that's not bad. I may very well trim that down, or maybe I'll just leave it as is. Like I said, it depends on the day and what I'm doing, or how the conditions are. So as I was saying earlier, I found this piece, and it was just the leather part's just a little bit thinner, and I just feels like it's going to be a good piece for the body. So everything I'm going to do is I cut like that triangle wedge on the last one, but this time, because it's going to, instead of sitting straight, this rabbit zonker, it's going to be wrapped. So it's going to be on an angle. So I do like a 45-degree snip like that. And I'm just going to tie in this tip. But when I tie that tip, when I start wrapping, the way I've cut that is going to help not make it chunky, if that makes sense, right? Like I say, you're trying to make everything flat and kind of uniform and consistent, and use as little material as you need to accomplish the task. So I'm going to tie it right in there at the tip. Definitely don't want to overdo this, because then your fly look like you'll have a big back end on it. So instead of being nice and flat, it's going to be like, bleh. So yeah, that's just sort of from sloppy tying techniques. And I've done plenty of those. I still do them. I'm not perfect. So then I'm going to try and flare out the hair, and I'm going to pull back as I wrap it. And you don't want to wrap over a piece of rabbit that's already wrapped. So again, that's how you get big, bulky, and chunky, and that's, no one likes that, and fish don't like it, I don't think. So you're trying to always just stay one wrap in front of your last wrap. And you don't want, as you wrap, to trap hair underneath the wraps. So you're always trying to, like, just take your time, pull it out, make sure there's nothing underneath, pull it tight. If you wrap loose here, it's going to be all sloppy after a while in the water, and it'll start falling apart and not look good. So you don't want to break anything, but everything's just nice and taut with tension, make it snug. And I feel like when you pull like this tight as well, it pulls the leather thinner. So that's helping you not have so chunky of a fly, and again, not more material than you actually need. So then as I start to get to the end here, I'm considering that behind this eye, I'm going to wrap a bunch of purple schlappen and some flash. But see how that's loose? If you don't keep some pressure on this, you can do some wraps, but I really like to kind of keep pressure, on this head, because what I don't like is, say I call this fly done. If that's all rattling around at the front, that's garbage. I don't like that. I want pressure behind it so it stays tight, even after I've caught a few fish on it or smashed it on a bunch of rocks. So I'm just considering how much space I need to wrap the schlappen. So I think that's probably going to be it. But if you wrap right, and maybe you don't want to use like hackle or the schlappen hackle behind this. I just like it. I think it makes the fly look better. You can just wrap it real tight with a zonker and put your flash in, but I got to leave a little bit of room. And again, you're trying to get the thread to go through the hair. You don't want it all caught in on itself. It doesn't look good. We only need a few like wraps to hold that in place. So I'm gonna cut that. And that part doesn't necessarily have to be pretty, because we're ultimately going to hide this in the next couple steps. But I want to make sure that's locked down. because that's a kind of a fail point. If you don't make that tight, that could fall apart on you after some use. All right, so that's good. But see how this pink bead's starting to get kind of locked in there? But this is absolutely ugly and nobody wants to see that on a fly. But it doesn't matter because I'm going to hide it. So what I'm doing is taking this purple flash. This is called, can't really read that. Whatever, some sort of dark blue flash. You can use whatever blue flash you want. But this is totally up to you how much flash you use. But I feel like even though flash is not subtle, I think if you use too much of it, it's kind of overkill, and it's almost too flashive. Flash. It's too flashy and too intrusive. So I like to be kind of subtle with my flash, you know, within reason. I mean, obviously put some flash on there, but maybe I'll just use that because you got to remember that's like going to be twice as much when I fold it back over. Yeah, too much, I don't know. I just don't think too much is any good. So you want to find about the middle. Call it there. You can also lick this a bit, and that might just help you keep that flash together. So you don't want to go all over the place. I just like it to be on the back of the fly. So I'm just going to do a couple wraps to lock it in there. And then even what I can do is like, see how I've got two pieces? I'll sort of split it by like keep my finger in the middle. And then that keeps it running down, say, either side of the back of the fly. I think that looks pretty good. Doesn't always have to be lumped up on top. And then I also like to wrap this down pretty good because you don't want to lose your flash because it can fall out. Yeah. And then I'm just going to take that right to where that tail is. And I try to cut it like kind of staggered a bit. I mean, I don't know if it really matters, but if you just go and it's just like on cut the same, I think you're missing out on an opportunity to have a bit more movement in the flash when it's kind of cut like it's staggered, I guess is the word. So you see his fly starting to come together, eh? The purple with the blue flash. It's looking good. So you know what you could do? Maybe I'll do it just for the hell of it. Lick all this back. Stays out of the way. Again, this is overkill, but you know, if you're building a fly to last and be durable, this is something you can do. Because I'll just take, and not a lot, because you don't want it all gobbed everywhere. Just take a little dab, and you also don't want to lock this head in yet. But I'll put a dab of super glue right there. And then one, that's just going to lock everything to this point up as well, right? So you're not going to have to worry about if you didn't do very good wraps, the things are going to come undone. So I'm going to let that sit for a second. We're almost there. So the next thing I'm going to do is find the perfect piece of purple schlappen. And I don't necessarily like using normal hackles for this. I like this type of stuff, the schlappen. I just feel like it just does a better job. And you don't want to overdo this either. This is just sort of the finish off your fly. So that looks pretty good. Pick that one. I don't know if you can see a difference. So somehow there's a regular, it must have just come off, but that's more of a traditional piece of hackle. It's very thin and straight feathers. And then this is your schlappen, right? It's thicker. And I like it parts better. So when you wrap that around as like behind the head, it just looks really good. Gives it a bit more body too when it's in the water, I think. It just undulates a little bit and pushes some water. So it doesn't just become like a really thin little piece of rabbit's honker, although I'm sure that would work. It's nice to just have this hackle head on the top. So the other thing you want to do is you want to strip that away because you don't need it. You just want to take the, like I said, use the minimum amount of material you need to accomplish a fly. And you don't need to go crazy on wraps. So I'll probably just do like 3 wraps on this. I'm just trying to find kind of where it gets consistent. So in this case, I'm going to bring it right up behind the pink bead head. Loose wrap, right back up. And then because the, I don't know what you you call it? I guess you call it the stem of the feather. I'm sure there's fly tires out there that are just like cursing at me right now because I'm so not professional at this. Don't know all the terminology. But I like to wrap that piece back. And again, that's just one more place to lock it in because I don't want it to break. And I know it's starting to look a little bit like gaudy at the end, but trust me, it'll work out. Now, I also don't want that piece that I folded back in there if I can find it. Yeah, right there. Yeah, so that's not going to work. So we're going to cut that off. Oh, come on, don't cut anything else. Then I'm going to try and spin it so that all the hackles can't, like, don't go crazy trying to do this, but I want the hackles pointing sort of up. So I'm going to start wrapping. So you're trying to lay the feather, I suppose, on its back, if that makes sense. You're trying to get these hackles to stand, they don't have to stand completely upright. Keep pulling them back. Sort of like wrapping the rabbit's anchor. You don't want that stuff all wrapping over itself. And you want all your material to flare up as best you can, or else why have you tied it into the fly? Yeah. So it's starting to look like a finished fly almost. Yeah, even though it's kind of a quick and dirty and easy fly to tie, it's nice to, take some time and make sure it looks good. So my deepest, darkest secret, I never really learned how to whip finish properly. And I just somehow started doing this. And you know what? It works. I throw super glue on everything after anyway, so I don't really care. But yeah, it's embarrassing. I have a whip finishing tool I always had, and my brain doesn't compute. So I just do it this way, and it works. Now the other thing you can do, that feels super tight. But the other thing you can do, if you're using even a different style hook, is you can then do some wraps in front if you want, and that'll help lock that in. But I've tied this fly enough, and that's why I'm trying to be conscious as I'm building the material forward. I put more and more pressure on this. And then, as always, the last thing that's going to lock that in place is a little bit of super glue. And you don't want to go overkill at this stage, right? Because the super glue dries like white, and if you gob it on right here, it'll. I don't think it matters, I guess, for catching a fish, but it'll soak up into your hackle and dry white, and your fly kind of looks crappy, and nobody wants that. Even if it's simple, doesn't mean you can't take pride in it. So I use just a very little bit, just wipe it right there. This is going to dry my terrible whip finish, but it's also going to dry and lock in that pink bead head a little bit better too. So on the bottom, so very minimal. I'm just barely touching it with the crazy glue. I'm trying to build this thing to be strong. Trying to build this thing to be strong, and I think it is. Dude, I think that's pretty good. So that's that part done. It's getting me pumped up to go steelheading. And there's 100 different ways to tie purple egg sucking leeches or black egg sucking leeches or pink, it's however you want to do it. So I'll let that dry for a minute, and I'll show you what I'm going to do next. So if you're not using a proper Waddington shank and you're just using the hook method like this, what I'm going to do so I don't stab myself is I'm going to take this dummy hook off. So I don't want it anywhere near my fingers when I start doing this. Learned that from experience. I got stabbed a lot. So what you're left with is this terrible, sorry, this broken piece of, not broken, bent piece of hook, and I don't need that. So what I'm going to do, so a pair of wire cutters here, and this is kind of up to your discretion, but you can see I'm cutting it right back. But you see where that trailer hook's material sits? I want to get close, but not too close, because I'm going to have to get in here with a file after. I don't want to be filing any of the trailer hook material and potentially weakening that. I'll call that good. So I've got it. These things go flying, so either put it over your, I got this little plastic bag for garbage, and I just snip it, because that piece I just cut, if you do it out here, it's going to go winging into your kitchen. You're going to step on it with your bare feet later, I promise, and you're going to regret doing it. So we're looking at pretty much a finished fly. Problem is we've got this little piece of metal sticking out the bottom, and it's sharp because I just cut it with the wire cutters. So good practice. Get yourself a little file. You don't have to go overkill. So I'm just trying to take that sharp edge off it. You just feel it. You don't have to grind it down to nothing. And that's why I use a wire bite tippet too, because I guess if you use some sort of like braided line material or something, or backing or something for this trailer hook, I guess it could kind of get nicked and frayed on this. So when you're using that wire bite tippet or just intruder wire trailer material as well, I have some of that, but it's too thick. I haven't had good luck with finding a thin trailer hook material that I can, when it's folded over, I can loop it through the eyelet of a size 2 hook. But this wire bite tippet from Rio works really well. But if you guys, I know it's out there, everyone else uses it, but if you want to leave in the comments what that is and where I can get it, I'm more than happy to buy some. It's funny. It's just like, just kind of, I feel like I live in a bubble sometimes. There is a lot of fishing around Whistler, but we don't have a fly shop anymore. I think there's one in Pemberton now. I think there was like a little one out of a garage or a shed a couple years ago in Squamish, but other than that, it's just Canadian Tire. So, we have to go to Vancouver or order online, which, it's nice to go to a shop and support a shop with spend your money at. So yeah, if you guys know where I can get some good trailer hook material, nice and thin but strong at the same time and not too rigid, love to hear about it. Yeah, so that's pretty good. You just want it to be smooth to the touch. That's pretty much it. The fly's done. Just kind of bring it all back to life. It's quick and dirty, and I've seen other people tie egg sucking leeches differently than this, and they look really good too. So I'm not here to say this is the end all be all. This is just what I kind of came to create over the years, and like I said, it works for me. They're strong, they last, and more importantly, they catch fish. Like honestly, if I was thinking about this the other day, if you had to leave me with one fly pattern for the rest of my life, it would be something like this. But it'll probably be in black and with blue flash. But man, I've had so many days steelheading where, my go-to black and blue fly like this, obviously, it works and I love it. But if you feel like the fish are there and they're just not biting, and maybe they've just seen your fly too many times, or other people are throwing black and blue too much, obviously you can switch and go orange or pink or something like that, or they'd hit white or olive. But man, I'll always throw on this like purple egg sucking leech fly, and they'll just go after it, man. And then I'll use it for like a few days straight because for whatever reason, purple's hot. Yeah, that's it there. That's a purple egg sucking leech. Like I said, this is my one of two favorite steelhead patterns. I would use this, but I would tie it in black with blue flash. And I won't use, well, sometimes I'll use the same bead head for the black ones, but other times I like to use these things called sculpin helmets. And they're just like black or black chrome. I'll show you. I'm going to sit down, hammer out a half a dozen of each. So at the end of the video, I'll show you what they look like at the end. But these things are great, these little black sculpin helmets. I think they also make something called fish heads. It's all the same. It's just not a pink bead head at the end, and it just looks like a black and blue sculpin. But man, Steelhead crush it, and they love it. And you know what? That's about the size. It's like only a few inches long, and if I trim it down, it'll definitely only be a few inches long. And yeah, simple, effective, practical, and most importantly, it's durable. I don't want to friggin' have a fly that falls apart on the first fish. Like I've seen that happen. I've seen snags break flies that weren't tied super strong, and yeah, I'd rather have a box of 20 of these than a handful of 3 or 4 super complex intruder flies. Don't get me wrong, I have tied a bunch of those in the past, and they're super fun, and for sure they work. But yeah, I've kind of at a point now where I just want a bunch of effective flies that didn't take me hours to tie, and if I snag it, oh well, I'll just grab a fresh one, and they all look exactly the same, and I'll throw it on, cast it in the water, I'm back into the business, right? So yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you guys are interested in fly tying videos, I guess you got to be into fly fishing to want to watch these ones. But if you are, let me know. Comment below, and if you want to see more of it, I'll do more of it. If not, I figured I'd just show you part of the process of getting ready to go up north fishing. I like to have a big handful of these in my fly box and be ready to roll at all times, and not have a pile of money invested in materials and time invested as well. So yeah, good times. Purple leg sucking leech. Hope you enjoyed it. All right, so just 2 things. One, I wanted to apologize for that timer that went off at the end of the video. I forgot I had it set, and just braising a deer shank in the oven. It was time to flip it. And 2, I wanted to just bring the flies outside. I tied up the black and blue one as well, and just wanted to give you a better look at them in the sunlight. I know my place is kind of dark and poorly lit, so I'm gonna have to fix that and buy some sort of light, I guess, if I'm gonna do more of these videos. But yeah, it gives you an idea. The purple leg sucking leech with blue flash, and then the black one with that sculpin helmet and blue flash as well. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. A couple easy flies to tie up real quick and super effective on steelhead. So till next time, take care, and we'll see you then.